Imagine the last thing your child sees is you fighting for your life. For 32-year-old Cher Maximin, that nightmare became reality. She took her little girl to a carnival, a day meant for laughter, music, and joy. But in seconds, everything shattered. Stabbed repeatedly in front of her toddler, Cher's final moments were filled with pain, while her daughters were filled with terror. This is the tragic story of how one act of senseless violence destroyed an innocent family forever. You're watching Vic's True Crime Stories, where we uncover the darkest corners of real-life tragedies and the human lives behind the headlines. Let's begin. Cher Maximin was the kind of mother who made even the smallest moments feel magical. Picture this, a sunny afternoon in the park, her 3-year-old daughter giggling as Cher pushed her on the swings. The kind of laughter that makes strangers smile. The kind of love that filled every corner of their little world. Cher's life wasn't perfect. She worked hard, she worried, like any single mother does. But when she was with her daughter, none of that mattered. It was just the two of them, wrapped up in their own private joy. Their home was small but warm. Stuffed animals piled in the corner. A framed photo of them on the wall, frozen in some happy moment. Cher's daughter would point at it and say, "That's me and Mummy," like it was the most important fact in the world. And to them, it was. So when the Notting Hill Carnival rolled around, of course Cher wanted to take her little girl. Family Day, bright banners, music thumping through the streets, the smell of jerk chicken and candy in the air. Kids with their faces painted like butterflies. Steel drums ringing out over the crowd. Cher held her daughter's tiny hand a little tighter as they walked in, smiling at the chaos around them. It was supposed to be one of those days they'd remember forever. But some memories aren't made the way we plan them. Because in the middle of all that color and noise, something was about to go terribly wrong. And the life Cher had built, the love, the laughter, the quiet little happiness, was going to be shattered in ways no one could have imagined. The carnival was in full swing now. The air smelled of fried plantains and sweat, the bass from sound systems making the pavement vibrate. Cher kept her daughter close as they moved through the pulsing crowd. Somewhere nearby, laughter turned to shouting. Not unusual for a festival this size. Tempers flared, people pushed. But this was different. 3 brothers moved through the crowd like sharks. The Thibus. Young men with hardened eyes, shoulders squared for trouble. People instinctively stepped aside as they passed. One carried something at his side. Not a bottle, not a phone. The streetlights caught the edge of it. A blade. Not some pocket knife, but the kind made for one purpose only. Across the way, a man named Ajay Isaac stood with his friends. Maybe he saw the brothers coming. Maybe he didn't. Words were exchanged. Then more than words. The crowd surged like a living thing, people stumbling back as the first punch landed. A bottle shattered. Someone screamed. Cher felt it before she saw it, that sudden shift in a crowd when fun becomes fear. She tightened her grip on her daughter's hand just as the wave of panicked bodies hit them. A shoulder slammed into her back. Someone's elbow caught her ribs. For one terrifying second, her daughter's fingers slipped from hers before she grabbed hold again. Then came the knife. Not hidden, not subtle. Raised high in the chaos. The brothers weren't running. They weren't hiding. They wanted everyone to see. The blade came down once. Twice. People screamed. Some ran. Others froze, not believing what they were seeing in broad daylight. Cher tried to move, tried to shield her daughter's eyes. But the crowd had its own will now, pushing them like leaves in a storm. She stumbled. The pavement rushed up to meet her. When she looked up, she wasn't looking at a stranger anymore. She was looking at death itself, a young man's face twisted with rage, the knife already coming down. What did she think in that final second? Her daughter? God. The unfairness of it all? We'll never know. The blade found its mark. And as Cher fell, Her last act on Earth was to reach for her child one final time. This wasn't gang territory. This wasn't some back alley. This was a family festival in the heart of London. And in broad daylight, in front of hundreds, a good mother bled out on the pavement while her little girl watched. The knife came down with terrifying speed. There was no hesitation, no second thought. The blade sliced through the humid carnival air and found its target with sickening precision. Cher didn't even have time to scream. She felt the cold steel first, a sharp, shocking pain as it tore through skin and muscle. Then came the warmth as blood began pouring from the wound in her thigh. Her legs gave out beneath her. The colorful carnival lights above blurred as she collapsed onto the hard pavement. People were screaming now, really screaming, but to Cher it all sounded distant, muffled. Her hands instinctively went to the wound, pressing down, but the blood kept coming. It seeped between her fingers, dripping onto the ground in thick, dark pools. Somewhere nearby, her daughter was crying. Not the whimper of a child who scraped their knee, but the terrified, guttural sobs of a little girl who just saw her mother stabbed. A kind stranger tried to shield the child's eyes, but it was too late. That image, her mother falling, bleeding, dying, was already burned into her young mind forever. The crowd parted as paramedics fought their way through. Their orange vests stood out against the sea of carnival colors like beacons of hope. But when they reached Cher, their faces told the terrible truth. This was bad. Really bad. They worked quickly, applying pressure, shouting medical terms to each other, but the blood kept coming. It mixed with discarded carnival flyers on the ground, turning the bright paper a sickening shade of red. Cher's vision began to darken at the edges. The pain was fading now, replaced by a strange numbness. She tried to speak, to call out for her daughter, but only a weak gasp escaped her lips. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the face of a paramedic leaning over her, mouth moving but no words reaching her ears. In that moment, amidst the chaos and the screaming and the blood, something truly horrifying became clear. This wasn't just an attack. This wasn't just violence. This was a mother being taken from her child in the most brutal way imaginable. And as Cher slipped away, the carnival music played on, the cruelest reminder that life doesn't stop for tragedy. The hospital was too quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold glow on the empty hallway outside the intensive care unit. Every few seconds, the clock on the wall ticked, each passing second another reminder that time was running out. Cher's family sat huddled together on hard plastic chairs, their faces streaked with tears they didn't bother to wipe away anymore. They held each other's hands so tightly their knuckles turned white, as if they could somehow will her back to life through sheer force of love. Doctors came and went, their expressions carefully neutral, but their eyes told the truth. The machines were keeping Cher alive, but the woman they knew, the mother, the daughter, the friend, was already gone. Every beep of the monitor was a cruel tease, making them hope for just one more minute, one more hour. But the damage was too severe. The knife had cut through more than flesh, it had severed the very thread of her life. When the end finally came, there was no dramatic flatline, no frantic rush of doctors. Just silence. A nurse gently placed a hand on her mother's shoulder and whispered the words they'd all been dreading. And just like that, Cher was gone. Outside the hospital, the world kept moving. Cars honked. People laughed. But for Cher's family, time stopped. They carried their grief like a weight, heavy and suffocating. In the days that followed, the community came together, candles flickering in the night, flowers piling up on the sidewalk where she'd fallen. A photograph of Cher, smiling and alive, stood at the center of it all. People who had never met her came to pay their respects, because this wasn't just one woman's tragedy. It was every mother's worst fear. It was every daughter's nightmare. Then came the trial. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled with people who wanted justice for Cher. Sheikhail Tibu sat with his head down, his face unreadable, as the judge spoke. There was no remorse in his eyes. No flicker of guilt. When the sentence was handed down, life in prison, with no chance of parole for Cher's family didn't cheer. They didn't cry. They just sat there, exhausted, because no amount of justice could bring her back. And in the middle of it all, there was a little girl who would never hear her mother's voice again, who would grow up with only photographs and fading memories, who would forever carry the weight of what she'd seen that day. The knife had taken more than Cher's life. It had stolen a daughter's future, a family's happiness, and a community's sense of safety. Because this wasn't just a crime. It was a ripple of pain that would spread for years, touching everyone who knew her. And as the candles burned down to nothing, one thing became painfully clear: some wounds never really heal. The memorial grew day by day. Stuffed animals piled high against the lamppost where Cher had fallen. Rainbow-colored teddy bears, their fuzzy faces damp from rain. Handwritten notes fluttered in the wind, some in careful adult script, others in the wobbly letters of a child learning to write. The simplest one cut the deepest, just 3 letters: Mom. A word that should have been spoken for decades to come, now pressed onto paper like a final goodbye. Cher's daughter would visit sometimes, clutching a framed photograph of her mother so tightly her small fingers turned pale. She never spoke at these visits. What could a child possibly say when their entire world has been stolen? The photo showed Cher laughing, her arms wrapped around her little girl in one of those ordinary moments that become priceless after someone's gone. The kind of moment you don't think to cherish until it's all you have left. The community refused to let Cher's death be just another statistic. Signs began appearing in windows and on fences. "Enough is enough," painted in angry red letters. Mothers held their children closer when walking past the memorial. Fathers glanced over their shoulders in crowds. The carnival would never feel the same again. How could it, when the memory of blood on pavement overshadowed the music and dancing? As the sun set over Notting Hill in the weeks that followed, the sky burned orange and pink, beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel. Life kept moving forward, as it always does. The flowers at the memorial wilted. The candles burned down to stubs. The news cameras packed up and left. But the whole Cher left behind remained, raw and aching. Her daughter would grow up without her mother's advice, without her hugs, without hearing "I love you" at bedtime. Every birthday, every holiday, every ordinary Tuesday would carry the weight of that absence. And while the world moved on, Cher's family faced the hardest battle of all, learning how to keep living when part of you has died. The knife took Cher's life in seconds, but the pain it caused would last lifetimes. In the quiet moments, when the memorial candles flickered in the dusk, one question hung heavy in the air: when will this stop? How many more mothers must die before something changes? The answers never came. Only the setting sun, the fading light, and the unbearable truth that some goodbyes last forever. Cher's story doesn't end here. It lives in the hearts of everyone who heard it, in the tears it brought to your eyes, in the anger that tightened your chest as you listened. Stories like this, they demand to be remembered. They demand action. They demand change. If this case shook you, if it made you hold your loved ones a little tighter tonight, then don't let that feeling fade. Share this video. Talk about what happened to Cher. Keep her memory alive so that maybe, just maybe, her tragedy can prevent another. This is why we tell these stories at Vic's True Crime Stories. Not for the shock, not for the views, but because victims like Cher deserve more than to become just another headline. They deserve justice. They deserve to be remembered. And most of all, they deserve to have their stories told with the weight and respect they demand. So hit that subscribe button if you believe, like I do, that these stories matter. Ring the bell so you never miss when we shine a light on another case that deserves attention. And down in the comments, let me know, how did Cher's story affect you? What changes do you think need to happen so no other child has to watch their mother die in the street? Because here's the hard truth. Tomorrow, somewhere, another life will be cut short by senseless violence. But if we keep talking, if we keep demanding better, maybe someday, that won't be the case anymore. This is Vic, signing off, but not staying silent. See you on the next one. And share. If you're listening somehow, we won't forget you.